Good morning, guys. It's Robbie Starbuck. We have an exciting show for you guys because we've been setting this up for weeks and we've got a new sort of way of doing things that I think is going to be very exciting to people because you're going to be involved. You're going to be able to call into the show and give your take on topics and we can battle it out, the good, bad, and ugly. So if you hate me, this is your opportunity to get to, really try to break down the arguments I'm making and us actually have a real discussion here. So I think that it's an exciting fusion of multiple different sort of parts of entertainment that I've always found really, stimulating. And so we're going to have these conversations today. We're going to talk about multiple topics, but we're going to start with this gag order situation with President Trump, because whether you love the guy or hate the guy, this is an Orwellian nightmare. So I think it's got to be discussed, and we're going to go through probably the longest part of the show today. We're going to go through the notes from court. Okay, so we're going to get started there, and you guys will see that in just a moment. These notes, we're going to be looking at somebody who was live there, straight off X. This is the beautiful thing about X is we're live on X, taking calls on X, and we're looking at the real life notes somebody was taking and posting on X. This guy, just for credit, he's senior editor at Lawfare, Roger Parloff. Okay. So let's take a look at this. We're going to go through this note by note because what people need to understand is the U.S. government, Department of Justice, was essentially making the argument that Trump needed to be muzzled during his case in Washington, D.C. Now, why is that concerning? Multiple reasons. First of all, we're in a presidential election, but even if you push that aside, I want you to imagine, even if you hate Trump, that you're being prosecuted and you believe falsely so, that you are being defamed and that you didn't do anything that you're being charged with. And then they're turning around and telling you, you need to be muzzled and you are unable to make the case you want to make. That doesn't sound very American to me. Okay, so let's go through exactly what happened today and we'll see. So they were at the U.S. courthouse this morning and took notes through it. So here's where we'll go to start this off. So this is the gag order hearing that live happened this morning, okay, and did issue a partial gag order. All right, so we're going to start right here. Trump's attorney says that Gentile should only apply to orders against attorneys, not parties. Trump also cites cases about attempts by judges to directly gag media organizations where you usually can't restrain speech without clear and present danger, an extremely high standard. However, they're not really upholding that standard in any way with this. So as you go further down here, you start to get into some of the more exciting stuff. We've got the judge explaining what the motion seeks at the very beginning, an order restricting out-of-court statements, prohibiting all parties from making or authorizing statements, including through social media. She's actually discussing a much less controversial subject first, so we can skip through that part. Now we move to the gag order issue. The order the government seeks is below, and I'll read it to you. The parties in this case and their attorneys are prohibited from making or authorizing statements to the media or in public settings, including through social media, that pose a, quote, substantial likelihood of material prejudice to this case. Such statements include, but are not limited to, statements regarding the identity, testimony, or credibility of prospective witnesses, and disparaging and inflammatory or intimidating statements about any party, witness, attorney, court personnel, or potential jurors. The defendant is also prohibited from causing surrogates to make statements on his behalf. Okay, so we're going to stop there for a second, because what does that mean? It is absolutely ludicrous. It essentially means he's not allowed to talk about the case if the prosecutors get their way. And I'm going to get there because the judge essentially gave them what they wanted. But I want you to think about this. Again, you look at this and it says, such statements include, but are not limited to, statements regarding the identity, testimony, or credibility of prospective witnesses. So you can't talk about the credibility of witnesses in a case that is being tried very publicly by the Biden administration. That's what they want. You can't say anything that's disparaging or potentially considered inflammatory. And by the way, who's deciding that? Because if it's the left, if it's the Democrats, which it is, everything is inflammatory to them. Okay. And we're going to get into a little bit of that later because the examples used in court are ludicrous. Okay. Absolutely ludicrous. So we're going to go a little further into this. The judge was reviewing the dispute over whether Gentile, the SCOTUS case allowing limits on attorneys, is limited, as Trump alleges. This goes on. It's honestly, a lot of sort of micro stuff that I don't think really needs to be discussed. But as you get further into these notes, he took meticulous notes. So if you follow along with me, you can go to his account, R. Parloff. I don't think that he's ideologically on the same page as us, but he did take great notes about what was going on. You see that essentially they start to question these things where the judge asks, intimidating statements. Can you explain what is disparaging and intimidating? And the attorney for the prosecution says the dictionary definitions, and she recited some of those. It's the combination of these things. There could be fair ways to disparage somebody, ... Judge says, you use the word fair, and that concerns me. Asking court to get involved for a very wide variety of statements, which the court ended up doing. So it obviously didn't concern her that much. And they responded, the standard here is that this is limited to witnesses at this trial, statements intended to influence the trial, article in Washington Post by Trump spokesperson, his intent to try this case in a court of public opinion, exactly what should not happen. Okay, first of all, there is nothing wrong with trying a case in the court of public opinion, and it is exactly what the United States government does on a regular basis. Okay, so there is absolutely no reason why prosecutors for the Biden administration should be trying to shut down a citizen's ability to try something through the media and get their message out. There's nothing wrong with that. If you are an innocent person and you want to go and make your case to the public about why you're innocent, you should be able to. And that includes being able to disparage people on the other side of the issue who you believe are wrong. Okay, they may be offended by it, and that's okay. That's how the system is supposed to work. I want you to imagine a world, go back to our founders, where they were afraid of offending people. We wouldn't exist today as a country, okay? We wouldn't exist. We would all be living under a monarchy somewhere, at best, okay? Probably communism, but maybe if we're lucky, under a monarchy. We're here because they precisely were not afraid of offending people. So we go further into this. They say essentially here that the standard is limited to witnesses at the trial. But what does that mean? That's essentially everybody who was in the Trump administration, everybody in the Biden administration, everybody in the Department of Justice, because the pool of witnesses is vast. The pool of people involved in the case is vast. Okay. And these are all central people to the politics of today. So if you're talking about the election coming up, well, that involves a whole lot of these people. So Trump is muzzled on the campaign trail from who he's allowed to talk about. We're going to go a little further with this, and then we're going to take calls again. Those calls are going to be live. So if you're on X, you're on Facebook, you're on any of these platforms, and you're following along with us, and you've got your thoughts, you want to get out there or questions, call in at 615-703-5888. Okay, so that's 615-703-5888. And this judge goes on and says, what about attempts to publicly praise a witness? And the prosecution said, well, that's what we're trying to get at, is bolstering a witness, for instance, is covered. So he's allowed to say nice things about witnesses, just not allowed to criticize anybody. And it says, let's see here. So the Trump attorney, Lauro, said, we're in a campaign dealing with content-based political speech. The Biden administration is attempting to silence his primary opponent. It's actually his general opponent, but that's what they said in court. Let me stop you there. Mr. Trump is a criminal defendant, and he's subject to the same rules as everybody else. And Trump's attorney said, well, yeah, everyone's complying. And the judge, very skeptically, in the opinion of Roger Parloff from Lawfare, said, everyone's complying. And Lauro, Trump's attorney, said, here's what these prosecutors want. To prevent President Trump from speaking out on the issues of the day, the role of prosecutors, appointment of judges, they all have political implications. And the judge said, well, I want to make sure I'm clear on this recurrent theme. The fact that he's running for president entitles him to make statements that are otherwise unlawful. He can make threats. And Lauro said, of course not. And he hasn't made threats. The judge then says, he has restraints on his speech. Do you disagree that those override his First Amendment rights in campaign? He's subject to conditions of release. So this is the judge admitting that conditions of release are already muzzling Trump in some way. Okay. And Lauro, Trump's attorney, says, what we object to is the Biden administration attempting to censor his political opponent. Mr. Trump is entitled to speak truth to oppression. He's entitled to criticize these prosecutors. And here we have a situation where the Biden administration and the judge stopped him and said, I know you have a message you want to get out, but I don't want to hear campaign rhetoric. Again, when in court, would you hear a judge do this when a lawyer is presenting the defense for their client. It's ludicrous. This is a political kangaroo court, and it couldn't be clearer. I don't care if you hate President Trump. You should be frightened by this, because if they can do this to President Trump, they can do this to anybody that you do like. So even if you're on that other side, you should be upset about this for that precise reason. And Trump's attorney noted that he's abided by every order in the ladies' court. And she says, well, I'm going to take issue with that. And Lauro continued, prosecutors haven't presented any evidence of a jury being tainted. The easiest thing to do is to put this trial off till after the election, and then we wouldn't have to rush to judgment. That's the way to deal with it. And the judge said, I will not yield to an election cycle. Okay, so very clearly, they want this in the election cycle. They want to make sure that this becomes an election issue, and you can't really hide that. So the judge asks now to the prosecution, Ms. Gaston, want to ask how this would work. Say I enter this order and Mr. Trump violates a restriction. What happens next? Revoking his supervised release, home detention, contempt. They're talking about, hey, do I throw him in prison? Am I going to lock him up at his house? How are we going to stop him from campaigning if we do actually enforce this and I grant this rule? Okay. And the prosecution says all of those options are available to the court. You could admonish, pursue financial penalties, like in the Stone case, modify conditions of release. And they go on to say any of those, but it's hypothetical. I suggest first we get in place the order. See, they don't want to talk about what happens next. They're just like, hey, we need the order. Give us the order. We can figure that out later, how we're going to throw him in prison or lock him up at home. And so the judge says, Mr. Lauro, assuming I issue the order, what would be proper procedural posture for a violation? And Lauro says it's asymmetrical. It doesn't bar Joe Biden from making statements. So he's essentially saying, look, like you're doing this in one direction. It's not fair because he's running an election against somebody else who's not being treated the same way. So it's putting your thumb on the 2024 election for who is president. We're not talking about a mayor race. We're talking about president of the United States. And so, the judge says, well, Joe Biden's not a party before this court. And so Trump's attorney makes the point that it's impossible to actually enforce this because, Trump's running against one of the people involved in this case, Mike Pence. So is Trump not allowed to criticize him at all? And that presents a host of issues because it's not just about who he's running against, because it's not just presidential candidates he's running against. He's running against an institution of the establishment and these uniparty people who have run DC and our administrative state for so long. And if you're running against all those people, you really have to have the ability to criticize them. Okay, so that's a central issue to this case. And I think that it's very clear what the judge wanted here. So, Trump's attorney made it very clear that this would be violating the First Amendment, and the prosecutors are really going after him for purposes of political prosecution. And he's made the point, there's been no threats, nothing amounts to intimidation, and what you've put in place is frankly working. And the judge literally laughed out loud. This is somebody who's not friendly to our politics and is noting the judge laughed out loud at that. Okay. How is that appropriate in a courtroom in a manner? We're talking about a case that is one of a kind. We are prosecuting a president. Okay. And you've got judges laughing. We saw that other judge in one of the other cases recently, that man sitting there taking, his time, that moment in the sun to pose and make sure that they got a good photo of him. It's embarrassing. This is not how a country should be run. Okay. And he says, the harm being suggested by prosecution or the Biden administration is completely speculative, no data. The judge intervenes and says the government filed redacted info from people involved who attested to what happened to them. That's not sufficient. And Trump's attorney said, of course not. That predated this case. And Trump's not responsible for what some crazed third party does. And the judge says, my concern is that the jury pool, the Biden administration and DOJ, special counsel staff, judge staff, political witnesses, okay, that there's going to be an issue for them. When did we start giving guilt to people based on the actions of third parties? If I sit on here and I tell you guys that I hate the Biden administration and I can't wait for them to be gone, and some crazy person twists that into a call for violence, that is not on me. I'm not asking anybody to behave like that, and I never would. I think it's totally out of bounds. But if somebody does, I'm not responsible for it. I will feel 0% guilt because I did not make that call. Somebody being deluded or mentally ill and deciding to go act on something that they've created in their own head is something they are solely responsible for, not us. So, you know what? We're going to take a pause. We've got a call, so we'll go ahead and bring in this caller, and then I'll go through the rest of the case with you guys. So let's see. I think we're getting them connected now. Go ahead and give me your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name's Jennifer. I'm from Northern California.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you doing today?
And I'm good. We're friends on X, so
Awesome.
And I don't mind. I would tell you what it is, but that's okay because I already told you my name and where I'm from. But anyway, I have a question about, and I know that Trump's lawyers have already covered this. However, I mean, it's just unprecedented to me that a former president, is they're talking about what may happen.
Yeah.
If for some reason he, breaks this gag order, and they're not being specific, but every just regular citizen, any regular citizen lawyer would absolutely get an answer to that question. And we all know the reason why they will not answer that question when it comes to President Trump. We all know why. And we're all sitting by, feeling a little helpless because there's really not much we can do other than just, air our grievances. Now, when we're talking about a jury, this is the problem with what they are doing. Of course, a jury is going to be affected by anything that he says or any of us.
Yeah.
Are they going to put a gag order on all of us?
That's essentially, honestly, that's where I think they are going to go next with this, because you're essentially asking half of a country to be silent about the prosecution of a president that they believe to be unjust. So, I don't see a scenario where this leads to a spectacularly good place. I only see dark roads in front of us, because when you've got the United States government making the argument that, hey, you're not allowed to criticize prosecutors, especially in a situation where you believe a prosecution is entirely unjust. I mean, that's communist stuff. This is communist tactics. That's one step removed from a total kangaroo court where you don't even get a trial. It's just you walk in and they say you're guilty and you're gone. I mean, I think that you're expressing something that a lot of people are feeling, which is, I think deep down a fear of where our country is going, but also in the moment, I think it's frightening to see that the U.S. government can do this to him, because if they can do this to him, they can definitely do it to you. Am I wrong?
Absolutely. No, you're not wrong at all. And I won't even get into a tangent about the J6 prisoners, but there are a lot of them in there that didn't commit any violent crimes whatsoever. They were just there.
That's absolutely
and when
right.
I saw how they treated them, and and I knew he would announce he would run again, but I knew as soon as Trump announced that he was running again, that they were going to do this. Anybody with half a brain cell knew that they were going to come for him. I just don't think anybody realized how hard they were going to come for him, and then also just do it blatantly in front of all of us. And it's so smug and condescending, and it's disgusting.
Thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. And I agree with you. I think this is one of those things that everybody deep down, they understand in terms of how offensive this truly is to everyone. There used to be this meme that went around that said, they're not coming after me, they're really coming after you. And it was totally true. They go after Trump as a proxy to go after you and to make people fearful of their own speech and their own beliefs and, just being themselves and being a proud American. And he's sort of a proxy for a lot of those attacks, no matter how you feel about him. I mean, he's definitely used that way. And I think, at the end of the day, this stuff is only taking us to a very dangerous place, because politically speaking, when you go look back at history, when you do things like this, it has a boomerang effect where it is then having, it puts us in a position on the right where we feel like we have to do something similar to get the Democrats to stop doing this. I don't think that's healthy for the country. I think that's a very dangerous thing. Again, if you want to call in and have yourself heard, you can call in at 615-703-5888 and we'll bring you on. But to continue down this case, they started to bring in Trump's messages from Truth Social, which, by the way, is an aside. I think it's a big mistake by Trump that he is putting all of his messaging out on Truth Social. There are not that many people on Truth Social. And you already saw what can happen when Trump comes back to post on X, formerly Twitter. It goes crazy. It goes crazy. And his message goes out so much further. And I think the Democrats are very happy with Trump staying on Truth and not going on X. I think that especially with these trials he's facing, it's important that you have cohesive messaging across the board. So I'd like to see him bring his messaging to X, no matter how you feel. I mean, even if you're not going to vote for Donald Trump, these cases you should care. You should understand that these are malicious political prosecutions and you should care about the messaging getting out there. So, this part was particularly funny. The judge started talking about how Trump called Washington, D.C. a filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment and said that this disparages the jury pool. Said, let's assume these statements have affected the pool. Why can't these issues be addressed through careful jury selection? And at that point, the judge says, to Trump's lawyer, do you disagree that Mr. Trump's statement could be understood as disparaging to Washington, D.C.? And Trump's lawyer said he's disparaging the Biden administration. The judge said that's not what he said. He called the district a filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment. Okay, which it is. I mean, to be totally fair, it is. And Trump's lawyer says Mr. Trump is entitled to speak out, draw attention to deep problems in this city that need to be addressed, but haven't been addressed by the Biden administration. Lauro then goes on to say, plus, these statements, if they had any effect, jurors would likely be biased against Trump, not for him. Isn't that the problem for censorship? And the judge says, you keep saying censorship. No question the court is entitled to impose limits on defendant's speech. And the judge says, we're talking about restrictions to ensure a fair trial. Okay, does anybody believe that? I don't. I don't believe that. And the filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment part, I thought that was a beautiful example of how petty these people are. Because, if you really think about it, you're essentially, they're policing just the way he describes this city. I want you to think about how ludicrous that is. It's insane. I do have a question for viewers. If you could tell me, I know on Instagram, people on Instagram cannot hear the calls, but on X or on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and comment if you are also unable to hear the callers that we're calling in. We're interested. We're trying this out live with you guys. Okay, this is sort of like a new technology thing. So we know we can hear it in studio, but want to make sure you guys can hear it. So going on here, the judge says, Mr. Trump repeatedly refers to President as crooked Joe Biden and the Department of Injustice. But wouldn't that be casting a broad net? How would name calling affect administration of justice? And the prosecution says, first part about criticizing Biden is an example of how this order does not restrict the order, which doesn't even make sense. But essentially what they're saying is he's allowed to do that. The judge says, does crooked Joe Biden violate the order? Gaston says he does that every day. Judge says, so it does not violate? And he says no. And so the judge asks, what about Trump saying Department of Injustice? And the prosecution for the DOJ says this does present a concern. The jurors will think the DOJ is unjust. Okay. First of all, it's unjust. But this is insane. Okay. You have the Department of Justice essentially asking for a gag order to shut President Trump up from criticizing them at all. Okay. He's not the only one calling them the Department of Injustice. That would be me and many other people because of their behavior and their actions. This is not just like an outraged feeling people have. This is their failure across the board in many different ways to do their job. You don't have to look far to see how they have totally different rules for different political parties, okay? Show me somebody in Antifa who is in jail for 22 years. Show me one. One who's in there for 20 years, who wasn't even at a protest, at a rally, at a riot. Show me one. You can't, because it doesn't exist. I could show you multiple from January 6th, the people who weren't even at January 6th in jail for 20 plus years. Okay? You've got Antifa people and BLM people who burned down cities, who didn't spend a day in jail, who actually got multi-million-dollar settlements from major cities. Well, on the other side, you've got literally a grandma with cancer. And the grandma with cancer got thrown in prison. Okay? We've got a call. We're going to bring in the call. Let's hear what they've got to say. Let's see. Go ahead and say your name and where you're from.
Yeah, this is Lori Heck.
Hey, Lori, how are you doing?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. So what do you think about all this?
Well, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
With everything that's going on in today's world, for everything we see, and the way our judicial system is working, like what we're seeing here, doesn't it fall under treason or a coup going on?
I mean, to be honest with you,
Am I wrong?
It's hard not to see it that way. I see it that way on a daily basis, and it's something I resisted for a certain period of time because you don't want to believe that about your own government, about your own country. But it's becoming increasingly hard to see it any other way, because you've got these people subverting not just the will of the people today, and not just fighting against a political party today, but entirely abusing and stomping on the system our founders created.
Whether it's
Go ahead.
right, it's in our Senate.
Yep.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And where do you call it quits? Where did the people have the right to come in and say, we're taking you down? We are running this country.
Well, I think,
As
2024,
it is we the people.
Yeah, 2024 is one of those final opportunities, in terms of elections. I will say this, election integrity is a major concern. I do think, this is something that people need to explain more on a nuanced level when it comes to how we have changed certain things. And so it's very important, on a federal level, you can see nothing important has been done in terms of election integrity, nothing. But that doesn't mean nothing has been done, because these elections are mostly run on a state level. And so you've got to look at those local county clerks and at each state individually. And there has been movement in a number of states in the right direction. And some things have happened to ensure that we have, more trust in our elections in 2024. So I am hopeful in that regard that we're going to have better run elections. And honestly, one of the most important things is the awareness that was spread from 2020 to 2024 is massive. So I have no doubt we are going to have a historic number of poll watchers in 2024 to ensure no shenanigans like we saw in 2020, where we saw places where there were no Republican poll watchers and then boarded up windows and things like that. I think we are going to avoid those situations in 2024. So I think we can have a little more trust. I appreciate your call. I agree. It's hard not to see this as treason, and hope you'll call back on a future episode. Jumping back in here, the judge said, so crooked Joe Biden's not a violation, but Department of Justice would be. And the prosecution from the DOJ said he can criticize Biden to his heart's content. The judge says Mr. Trump believes his prosecution is politically motivated, but how does that prejudice this proceeding? Seems close to his right to assert innocence and criticize the government's use of power, which lies close to the heart of the First Amendment, which is totally true. If the judge was actually abiding by what they said here, we'd be talking a different ballgame here, okay? Because that is the core truth that people should understand, whether you love or hate the guy, okay? This is his right. This is his First Amendment right to criticize the government. He sees this as a selective, vindictive political prosecution, as he should. I see it the same way. And, so what the DOJ said is the solution is for Trump to file a vindictive selective prosecution motion, which he probably will. But that's not the whole story, okay? It's not just motions that Trump should be allowed to do in court, which will probably end up hidden at some point. It's about being able to make that public case to people, especially when you're running for president. You have an entire operation of all these different media outlets that work for the Democrats who are trying to make a case that you are a criminal that has totally betrayed our country. When you've got all of these media outlets trying to do that, an entire political party, these huge dark money operations funded to make you look like a criminal, you have every right to assert your innocence. And that means impugning the character of the people who are standing up against you in those political cases, which includes a ton of political people. Okay. So when you look at this stuff, I mean, you don't have to look very far to see how corrupt it is, because even the judge in these statements makes it very clear that they know this is wrong. They know it's wrong. And, we're getting toward the end here of this, and then we've got other topics to go to, but I really think it's important people understand this whole thing. When you look at this, look at this part. Okay, ready? So the judge says, how does criticism of Biden and the DOJ factor in if I enter this order? And the prosecution says the crooked Joe Biden thing, he's not a participant in this case, can definitely say that. And Trump's lawyer says, what if Trump says crooked Joe Biden approved this prosecution, which I believe is politically motivated to interfere with this election? And the prosecution says, yes, Your Honor, that violates the order, falsely suggesting that Biden directed this prosecution, which he did not. And the judge said, to my surprise, problem is, an argument can be made that the DOJ is under control of the executive branch. It's part of a campaign. That violates the gag order. The prosecution said by the plain language of the order, it would not violate, even though they just said it would, because Joe Biden is not party participant or court personnel. Lauro, Trump's attorney, says they have to read their own papers before they respond to the court. What if Trump says Hunter Biden is allowed to sue witnesses and allowed to talk and I'm not? We're just trying to struggle with circumstance of what is being proposed here. I'm thinking George Orwell would have had a field day with what we're hearing from these prosecutors. Absolutely. I mean, this is like Orwell's nightmare. Okay, this case. It should never happen in America. I don't care. I want to make this very clear for people who are on the other side, hate listening. Understand this. If they were doing this to AOC, I would feel the exact same way. You cannot prosecute somebody politically like this and then tell them, hey, you're not allowed to make your case publicly. You're going to be gagged from criticizing the people who are standing against you in these cases. That's ludicrous. It's absolute. I mean, this is the stuff of communist tyrants. And I can't stress that point enough. Okay. My family came from Cuba, where stuff like this became normal. We live in America. We need to be free to speak, and to speak freely in a way that can offend people sometimes. Okay. If you have thoughts on that, by the way, call us 615-703-5888. We're happy to take calls from people who agree and disagree and hear your thoughts. I think that's one of the things we want to make really special about this show, is that we're a voice of people on all sides, and let people really have their voice heard on these platforms and have that robust discussion. We're going to disagree sometimes. We can't be afraid of that. We've got to have that, to be a strong country. So there's some, sort of small details here we're going to gloss over. The judge asks, in what kind of case is it appropriate for a criminal defendant to call a prosecutor a thug and stay on the streets? And Trump's attorney says, whether it's language I would use. See, I don't like this attorney talk. I get why he has to do it. He's like halfway, trying to denounce the statement. But here's the truth. I want you to imagine, okay, no matter how you feel about Trump, again, some people get Trump derangement syndrome where they can't see past him. Pretend this is just some random person in your family that you love very deeply, okay? You know they are innocent, and they have been charged by what you know to be a corrupt prosecutor, or you feel is a corrupt prosecutor, okay? And the court then says, that person in your family, they tell them, you are not allowed to call the prosecutor a thug in any context. That's un-American. It's your right to say you believe they're a thug. If somebody's trying to lock you up in prison for years of your life, steal you away from your family, destroy your reputation and your businesses, I think you have every right to call them a thug. Maybe that makes me crazy, but I think that that's entirely warranted. The judge says, well, actually, Trump's attorney says this is prosecution that's unprecedented, using statutes in all sorts of crazy ways to take Trump out of a political cycle. Again, true. Okay, there's no denying this. It's the first time we've had a sitting administration prosecute a political opponent. Again, true. You can't deny these facts. These are raw facts. No matter, take his name out of it. Again, I can't encourage you enough. If you have some issue with Trump, take his name out and look at this case just on its face, that this is being discussed in a United States federal court. And the Department of Injustice, which I'm going to call them repeatedly now that I know it bothers them so much, is making these arguments, because it's unheard of. and it's entirely unwarranted in a free country. This is not a free country as long as this is going on, okay? And you see that more and more every day. The judge notes Trump tweeted last night. He's in Iowa campaigning today. So please, Mr. Lauro, let's tone this down a little bit. And Trump's lawyer says it is toned down. As an advocate, I'm entitled to make arguments on my client's behalf. But if Your Honor wants to censor my speech too, the word Trump chose may not be the word you would, but he's entitled to make those statements under these circumstances. And the judge says he's targeted special counsel Jack Smith's family and wife. And Trump's lawyer says it was not an attack on a family member. Indication might be political bias. By mentioning their spouse, the judge said, and Trump's attorney said it deals with political issues related to Jack Smith. There's no order in place preventing him from saying this is politically biased prosecution by a politically biased prosecutor. And the judge says, what do you feel is appropriate for him to talk about this prosecutor's family and spouse? Are you telling me that's appropriate and should be allowed? And Trump's attorney said he's entitled under the First Amendment to describe, and the judge says, interrupts, in unfettered terms, even if it means mentioning the prosecutor's family. And Trump's attorney says it becomes part and parcel of the First Amendment. Part of reality is being involved in cases of this nature. And then the assistant special counsel Gaston says, I think you identified why the government paired disparaging and inflammatory in the order. What this is doing is inflammatory. What Trump is doing is inflammatory. He understands the impact. They motivate others to threaten others. In case of witnesses, it threatens and chills witnesses. In the 9/17 Meet the Press interview, Trump said false things about one of the witnesses in the case, declined to answer certain things, declined to answer questions about his conduct on J6. He's able to control himself. He's used the campaign to try this case in a court of public opinion. Again, that's not a legal argument. Okay. The court of public opinion is probably the most important court when you're carrying out a political prosecution. If you're the victim of it, you need to tell the American people what's going on because they don't understand this. They don't hear this. You're not displaying this live on TV for people to hear how ludicrous these courts are today. So he has to get the message out. No matter how you feel about him, that's his job. Okay. He's got to fight for his life. And again, if you want to call in, 615-703-5888, we'll be taking calls in a minute here. And then the judge says that they were deeply disturbed that Trump made posts about another judge's clerk and called her Schumer's girlfriend and said she was running the case against him. The judge asked Trump's attorney, do you think that's acceptable? And here's the funny part. Okay. I don't know if the lady that Trump posted is Schumer's girlfriend. What I know is that Trump sometimes exaggerates for effect of making people aware of something. And he was making people aware that the clerk is very involved in politics. So involved that, she proudly has photos posing with Chuck Schumer. Okay. Clear enemy of Donald Trump, not a friend to Donald Trump. Okay. And it just shows how biased these cases are. So I'm not even going to go into that whole part there with that tweet. We can skip ahead from that. Trump's attorney made the point that, that's something that the New York judge dealt with already. It's already been dealt with, and Trump has totally abided by it. And the judge is now discussing statements about witnesses, mentioning posts about Pence and Barr. And, you see Trump's tweet there where it says, wow, it finally happened. Little Mike Pence, a man who was about to be ousted as governor of Indiana until I came along and made MVP, has gone to the dark side. I never told a newly emboldened, not based on his 2% poll numbers, Pence, to put me above the Constitution, or that Mike was too honest. He's delusional, and now he wants to show he's a tough guy. I once read a major magazine article on Mike. It said he was not a very good person. I was surprised, but the article was right. Sad. Okay, listen. You may think that post is whatever you think it is, and that's fair. You have your opinion about that post, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, doesn't really matter. The point of this is that this is being discussed in court, as in seriously taking away the ability of Trump to be able to say things like that during an election where he is running against that person. Okay? This is what we're talking about the Department of Justice trying to do. And it's insane. It's ludicrous. So, you don't have to like the guy to see how crazy this is. And again, next, the judge goes to the tweets, or I guess posts, about Mark Milley from Truth Social where Trump ended up saying essentially that in the past, in past history, what Milley did, talking to China without presidential authority, would have been considered treason if it was done behind the president's back. And he noted what the penalty for that was. People are allowed to have their opinions about that. They're allowed to think that that's too far. They're allowed to think that that's just right, whatever it is they think. But again, the crux of this issue is that a court is trying to step in and take away the ability of the leading presidential candidate right now. He's leading Joe Biden in every, polling average that's out there. He's leading him. And you're trying to steal that ability to speak out against them in a very effective way. That's incredibly dangerous. I mean, one of the most dangerous things you can do is muzzle people like this. And then they start mentioning statements about Brad Raffensperger. He's Secretary of State in Georgia. The judge says, let's start with witnesses who are identified but who are public figures. I take your point. It's impossible for Trump not to criticize Pence, who's running, but none of the others fit that description. So in the end, the judge did agree he can criticize Pence, but there's all these other figures who are public figures that the judge is a little more on the fence on Trump being able to criticize. And the judge says, what about these other witnesses who aren't running? And Trump's lawyer said the government had opportunity to get affidavits from Mark Milley, Raffensperger, Barr, and the judge said, why should they have to? And Trump's attorney says, all of those men have publicly criticized President Trump, and they give as good as they get. And the judge said, really? Milley suggested Trump should be executed? And Trump's attorney said, well, and then said, now he's criticizing Milley's conduct and saying Trump had a reason to criticize him. And the judge jumps in and says, but punishable by death? And Trump's attorney says, what he did say was that some sort of conduct by a head of Joint Chiefs of Staff going around civilian leadership and speaking to China. And the judge jumps in again. Why appropriate to suggest appropriate punishment is death, writing in all caps, DEATH. Doesn't that go too far? And Trump's attorney said, still true. Death penalty for treason is factually true. That's not inciting. And it is factually true, no matter what you think about it. That's still the penalty for treason. So again, we're talking about muzzling somebody's ability to just say facts. Okay? That's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. So we're talking about the First Amendment. And again, we get to the end of this right now, and you see, we're going to jump subjects in a moment, but the judge ended up actually granting a partial version of this order. And you see, I would suggest we'd be here for hours if I go through this whole thread here, but you can see the guy's account, RPARLOFF. You should go read and follow along to see the rest of this, but it's very concerning stuff. It's very, very concerning because if they can do this to him, again, I want to stress this. We had a caller on earlier. We talked about this exact subject. If they can do this to President Trump, they can do it to you. So you have to make sure that you're okay with that. If you're trying to look the other way on this, if you're on the other side, you've got to be all right with that. So now jumping to another topic here, I want to point something out that I thought was pretty interesting. You may not have noticed a definition changed, okay? This is Merriam-Webster. So you could look this up alongside me right now. Look up anti-vaxxer, okay? I want you to look that up. Anti-vaxxer. And now let's see the definition. The new definition of anti-vaxxer is a person who opposes the use of some or all vaccines, regulations mandating vaccination, or usually both. So they're saying, even if you have had all your vaccines, okay, but you oppose mandating it on people because you believe that it's wrong for a government to force a shot into somebody's arm, that you are an anti-vaxxer. That's the new definition. And this is something, again, I've talked a lot recently about how we're descending onto a path to hell that really is communism and how dangerous that is. Well, one of those elements is changing language, and it's something we've seen a lot of the left doing. They want to change definitions of words, create new words, replace old words. We've seen it with things like Latinx, okay? As a Latino, it drives me nuts. There's no Latino I know who wants to be called Latinx, okay? I don't know what it is, but it sounds honestly disturbing, okay? In my view, it sounds like something kind of disturbing. So Colin, let me know, if you have any thoughts on this changing definition of words like anti-vax. here's another thing I thought was interesting. So NBC ran this story about a week ago saying conservatives stoke fear of a Hamas attack in the U.S. No credible threat. Okay. This is what the FBI says, and of course it's an anonymous source. Okay. Now let's jump ahead to yesterday. It's just a difference of a couple days. Okay. And let's see what the head of the FBI says.
In this heightened environment, there's no question we're seeing an increase in reported threats, and we've got to be on the lookout, especially for lone actors who may take inspiration from recent events to commit violence of their own. So I'd encourage you to stay vigilant, because as the first line of defense, protecting our communities, you're often the first to see the signs that someone may be mobilizing to violence. I'd also ask you to continue sharing any intelligence or observations you may have. And on our end, we're committed to doing the same so that together we can safeguard our communities.
Okay. I just want to point out exactly what he just said is what I and other conservative, larger accounts said online from the moment that Hamas attacked Israel. We said copycat attacks are something to worry about. Okay. Our threat level should definitely be raised. I mean, look at our border. If you doubt that Hamas-style terrorists are in our country, you've lost your mind, okay? It couldn't be clearer. Just watch the videos. Just watch the videos. Look at videos from the West all over the world. Western civilization has allowed in people that hate us, period. That hate us. When you know that reality, it doesn't take rocket science to understand that there's a threat to the West all over, including the United States. So NBC treats us like we're crazy for saying, hey, be vigilant, be aware, see something, say something, just very basic, preparedness. And here's something I actually said, is I said, look, this isn't just about the fact that we're going to see an increased threat of terror from groups like Hamas. This is just general preparedness that I think every man and woman should have. When I teach my children how to be safe, I teach them, hey, when you walk into a restaurant, look around, know where your exits are. Okay. Sit in somewhere where you can see the entrance. You can see who's walking in. If anybody seems suspicious to you, watch their hands. Hands usually tell you a lot. Watch their eyes and their hands. For me, I always tell people, if you're in a place where you can concealed carry, you should be carrying. I think that, some people see that as like this crazy thing. To me, I see it as an extension of my love for my family and my community. God forbid I'm ever in a situation where some crazed lunatic comes in and wants to shoot everybody. I want to be able to be a first line of defense and step in between that crazy person and the people I love. And what's funny about that is some of the people who criticize the most about those things, I don't think they understand that for people like me, if I was in that situation and some crazed lunatic comes into a restaurant, let's say, and they want to shoot everybody, I'm not going to look behind me and say, hey, what is your party identification? Because before I risk my life for you, I need to make sure who's a Democrat, who's a Republican. Sane people don't do that. They don't. You just either have a moral conviction or you don't. You're either convicted enough to protect the people you love or you aren't. Some people just apparently aren't wired that way. I don't understand it. I don't understand men who are not wired to want to protect the innocent, who aren't wired to protect women and children. Honestly, the whole situation in Israel and Gaza, the biggest issue for me is women and children. What the men in the two groups do, I think, Israel has a right to defend itself and I think obliterate Hamas. But I think at the same time, you have to be very careful that you protect the lives of innocent women and children. And that's the hard balance in any war to strike, especially, in these times. Our ability to see in real time what's going on is both incredible and really terrifying sometimes, because, this stuff, we see every little piece of it. And it's not easy to do what Israel's doing right now. And I think that, if the U.S. could encourage anything in this situation while we help them and assist these people who are totally right to defend themselves, it would be to encourage, that we do everything we can to try to keep women and children safe, and also help save these hostages. Okay, there's still American hostages right now. I'm curious how people feel about that too. The American hostages, if you can call in, I want to know what you guys think about what has been done, because these hostages are still there. Nothing has been done. So I'm curious what the public opinion on this is. Do you think we should have sent people in to save our American hostages? Do you think we let Israel deal with it? Let this whole thing just kind of play out and let Hamas do whatever it is they're doing to American citizens? You can call in at 615-703-5888. That's 615-703-5888. I think that's an important subject to really go deeper on here, because you've got a situation now where essentially these people are just waiting there. Their families are waiting for something to happen. And I don't think that, to be frank with you, we've done enough to get our own citizens back. We've done a lot of talking. I think that's what the Biden administration likes to do. They like to talk about stuff. But I think that, you put yourself in the shoes of a parent whose child has been taken hostage. You want the SEALs in there. You want special forces knocking down doors. You want the people who kidnapped your child dead. If we're being real about it, you want that. So when the Biden administration is just sitting there talking about these things, I don't think that's good enough. You guys tell me. You can call in 615-703-5888, and we'll get your take on it. But I watch videos like this here. We're going to play you a video right here. I want you to tell me what country this is. What country do you think that is? That's France. Okay? That's France. That's not a Middle Eastern country. It's not a Middle Eastern country. That is France. I'm going to play that again. I want you to think about that. This is France. Just think about that. Okay? Think about that. And here's another one I want you to think about, okay? Let's pull this story up. Israeli billionaire, Idahofer, quits Harvard board, blasts university's president over Hamas student letter. Okay? So if you're not familiar with this letter, essentially these ridiculously insane left-wing groups at Harvard of students wrote this letter essentially in support of Hamas and them terrorizing and murdering children and women, and just awful. I mean, they're equivocating to no end and trying to, sort of be the Hamas cheerleaders. And all of a sudden, all of these billionaires start getting concerned about it. Billionaire hedge fund CEO Bill Ackman has doubled down on his call to release the names of the anti-Israel Harvard students. Okay. Now, look, it's not that I don't agree with these people, that these college students are absolutely insane and should realize that there are consequences for their behavior. I don't think they should be lifelong by any means, but I do think some consequences are a good learning tool. Okay. But I do think that it's very telling that you can see, the billionaires really do have a pretty big impact on the decision-making of universities. When they say we're closing our checkbooks, universities actually listen to that. So my question is, where were these people back when BLM was burning down cities and colleges were all applauding it? Where were these people when Republicans were being chased off campuses, or in Riley Gaines' case, being essentially kidnapped on campus, where they held her against her will? Where were they? Where were these people as speech was ripped away from people who had unpopular thoughts on college campuses? They were nowhere to be found. And so I think that's something, we've got to be real with, that essentially those things didn't mean enough to the big time donors. Or if they did, maybe those donors now have a newfound understanding of their ability to impact the direction of these universities. So I think it's a good thing they're doing this now, but they need to actually act in the same sort of respect in the future. So, I'm interested, hear your thoughts on this. If you have thoughts on the Israel situation right now and how this is played out at universities or just the war in general, you can call in again, 615-703-5888. We're figuring out the phone line stuff right now, but it should be open now. So if you call in, we'll bring you on to talk about that. Some good news for you guys, though. New Zealand, you can see this headline here. New Zealand elects conservative Christopher Luxon as premier after 6 years of liberal rule. Their premier is essentially, their president. So if you don't remember, this was the illustrious premier of New Zealand previously. We'll pop in on her. I love this photo. That's probably how she was feeling over the weekend. They finally got what was coming to them. It turns out tyranny is not popular. Okay. People in New Zealand had had enough of the lockdowns, the mandates, the forced everything, being treated like they were caged animals, okay? People had had enough. They went the other direction. They elected a Christian conservative. And Elon Musk responded to me when I brought this up. He said, this is something we're going to see in other places across the world, something to that effect. And I think he's right. I think we are going to see this across the world because people have had enough. They don't want any more of the tyranny. They want to be free. They want to be free to make decisions, and obviously there's things in a, really cohesive moral society where there's going to be guardrails, but in general, people want freedom of movement. They want to be able to make their own decisions about what they put inside their body. They want to make their own decisions as to where they decide they want to work, how much they want to work for, things like that. People want to make their own decisions. They don't want to be told, this is how you have to live your life and have everything done by decree. Okay. And I want to make that point very clear about freedom to put what you decide is okay inside your body. That does not mean freedom to kill a child inside your body. Okay. Because that's something totally different. That's a second person now. That's not your freedom. So I want to make that very clear. Medical freedom encompasses what you choose to take, what medicines you take, what you inject in yourself, all those things as medicine. If you have cancer, you decide you want alternative treatment, not to do chemo, that should be your right. Nobody should try to stop you. Okay. And those are the things that they used to be called liberal values in some of these senses, like free speech used to be called a liberal value. It's not anymore. Liberalism almost doesn't exist anymore. I mean, if you think about the Democratic Party, they're the most illiberal group of people possible. They're definitely not liberal. I actually cringe every time I hear the word liberal to describe the Democrats because there is nothing liberal about them in terms of classical liberalism. Not even close. We're talking about people who want to police everything you do, what speech you can use, what literally what you can wear. They want to mask you. Okay? They believed it was their right to inject something into you for you to have the privilege to be able to go grocery shopping or go to a restaurant. There's nothing liberal about these people. Hasn't been for a very long time. Here's something I found interesting is a Fox News story from today. Biden campaign to launch account on Trump's Truth Social. There's very little truth happening on Truth Social, says the Biden campaign, but at least now it'll be a little fun. Okay. And they say the Biden administration is launching blah, blah, blah. Okay. They say they're joining Truth Social for the purpose of meeting voters where they are. That's interesting because from my understanding, the Democrats have been saying nobody's on Truth Social, but now they're saying they're meeting voters where they are. And secondary to that, they say at least it'll be a little fun. Here's the problem, though. Everybody knows Joe Biden doesn't post himself on X. He doesn't post himself on Facebook. He doesn't post himself on Instagram. Okay. This became very acutely clear this year when Corinne Pierre, she got caught tweeting from the wrong account. She tweeted from her account something from Joe Biden and forgot to switch accounts. So it became very clear who's actually doing the posting for him. Back then it was called Twitter. So what's the point? You're going on Truth Social to have some intern or the press secretary copy and paste stuff you're posting on X? Who does that make sense to? Nothing about this is unique. Nothing about it is interesting to people. I mean, I think stuff like this is really silly. And it's I think it shows how really silly our politics has become. You know, it's very childish in a lot of ways, and it's sad because it shouldn't descend into that. But you know, this is how you end up with ideologies like this one. Let's play you this video. So, I mean, it's kind of like chickens for KFC, these videos, you know, of for people who are watching from Instagram, they can't see the videos as well as everybody else on the other platforms can. So we played a video just now of these, they call themselves Queers for Palestine, I believe is what they say. Is that right? Queers for Palestine? Yeah, that's it. Queers for Palestine. Okay. It's like chickens for KFC. I mean, I don't know how else to describe these people. I mean, it's like dogs saying like they love the dog catcher. It's ludicrous. The whole thing's ludicrous. You know, as you go further here, and this happened all over the country, by the way, these protests where they had the Queers for Palestine. I think we've got a caller we're bringing on here. Let's go ahead and bring them in. Tell me your name, where you're from.
Hey, Robbie. This is David from El Paso, Texas.
How are you doing, David?
Well, I wish I was doing better, man. Seeing the state of our country, I'm getting pretty worried.
So how do you feel about this situation with Israel and what's happening there?
I'll be honest with you, Robbie. I'm wondering why on earth has nobody been able to take out the top commanders and the top people in charge of Hamas? It seems like to me, our intelligence, our abilities, we would be able to take those people out with pinpoint accuracy, kind of like how we took out bin Laden. I mean, why has that not happened?
I agree totally. It's not happening because the president has not made it happen. I mean, if we're being very honest with each other, I think that's truth. You know, the president has the ability to make it happen and just hasn't done it, you know, and the question is why? Why are we letting, 20 plus American citizens languish in the, care of Hamas? I don't think that that's very caring. And it's honestly very confusing. I don't understand what the Biden administration is waiting for in terms of saving American hostages. I think that should be like step one. You know, I think in government, really the principal number one job that you have is protect your people. Security. I think that's number one. And he's failing in that regard right now. You have American citizens over there and they're not being kept safe. They're literally in the care of terrorists right now, who we have to hope and pray have not killed them or done horrible things to them. And so I think when you look at it like that, it is dark. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it is. It just makes me go back to the Afghan withdrawal, when he first got into office, and just how botched that was, and the lives that were lost during that. It just kind of makes me wonder, does he even give a hell about the 20 plus? There's probably more Americans over there than we know about.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do. I'm going to ask for your thoughts on one more thing, and then we've got another caller to go to. But this situation on universities right now, where you've got these billionaires finally demanding that the administrations and the students start to behave like normal people and stop acting like lunatics. What do you think about that? Why do you think they're suddenly concerned and suddenly, making a point of saying, "Hey, we've got to take this back"?
Have some sort of connection to, obviously the Jewish faith or something, but I think you saw it happen so many times where people they would say something about Trump, or they'd say something about any sort of conservative figure on a university campus, and they would be praised, right? And now it's like they're kind of getting a little bit of their own medicine. You can't just go around and say things that are just completely outlandish and not having a consequence for it, especially with a situation like this, Palestine and Israel thing. I don't really know why exactly they're coming out all of a sudden for this, though. What are your thoughts as to why that's happening?
Yeah, I don't think it's even religious per se. I think it's actually about the Overton window of acceptable conversation. I think, there's this idea of what is acceptable. And there's this window there that's like, okay, everything in this box is acceptable to talk about. And then there's stuff outside that is not acceptable. And I think for a lot of these people who are suddenly, showing that they have some values and that they demand that the universities they give ungodly amounts of money to behave a certain way, it all kind of centers around this idea of, are you within these confines of something that is acceptable to have a problem with? And anti-Semitism, is definitely within the confines of the Overton window of acceptability when it comes to what is acceptable to be upset about. And so you're seeing them do that. But what I'm saying is, you guys have so much money and ability to go outside the bounds of that. Like, it's on you. You need to do that. We're jumping to the next caller, though. Thank you for calling in. Let's see who we've got next. Go ahead and tell us your name and where you're from.
Hey, big fan of the show. My name's Al. I'm calling from San Dimas, California. Originally born in Scottsdale, Arizona, but I moved to Tucson when I was 3. And then my dad got a job in New Mexico, so we moved to Santa Fe. But my mom got custody, so I moved back to Tucson, ended up in Santa Fe again. She kicked me out of the house, so I moved back in with my dad, who was in El Paso at the time. And then I moved in with a friend of mine in Washington State. And I visited San Francisco for a few days and eventually moved back in with my dad in El Paso.
And then you ended up in San Dimas.
With my mom, of course.
And then you got
living in Chalmette, Louisiana at the time. Yeah. No, first we packed up our stuff and moved in with her. And then when I was about 18, I moved in with my aunt in San Dimas.
All right, let's get to your question. What's your question?
City, Utah. Yeah, my question is that I've been all around. I've lived in Chalmette, and then I moved back to El Paso, and then I finally ended up in Tucson, got a job in Texas, so I moved to El Paso again, but I didn't have a place to stay, so I moved to Scottsdale.
All right, this is the beauty of taking callers. This is the beauty of taking callers. Sometimes you get people who wanna make people laugh. I appreciate it anyways for the laughs. We're gonna jump to the next person on the line. All right, go ahead and give us your name, where you're from. Oh, I think they disconnected. You know what? We're going to jump ahead. I've got another story here. So this, by the way, for people, we're talking about the universities. This is what we're talking about. These are the types of images that a bunch of colleges were posting. Okay, this is what a bunch of college groups were posting over the weekend. It's this Day of Resistance stuff. Okay. And we had this happen in Nashville too. They have a group here, Middle Tennessee Socialists. Okay. And they have these big rallies. They go out. They're not afraid to essentially totally back these terrorists who literally were just murdering children and women. You see this image here with the hang glider. That's the image of the people who came in and killed women and children. It's insane. There's no excuse for it. And I do have to give you guys some bad news. I gave you guys good news earlier about New Zealand. I got to give you guys some bad news. So I'm going to play you a video real quick, and then I'll explain the bad news.
The lowest unemployment in European Union is Poland. The highest GDP after COVID in European Union is Poland. One of the lowest debts in European Union is Poland. So don't give us this rubbish about the need of educated immigration, as we heard yesterday. We don't need your doctors. We don't need your engineers. Take them all, and pay for them. We don't need them. You know why? Because there's zero terrorist attacks in Poland. Why? Because there's no illegal migration in Poland. So don't give me this look. Don't give me these arguments about the populism, because this is a fact. This is your data from Eurostat. So we don't need your engineers. We don't need your doctors. Take them. Do not teach us. Do not teach us about democracy, because we know what the democracy is. So learn from Poland, be like Poland. Thank you very much.
Learn from Poland, be like Poland. I couldn't agree more with him in terms of the way Poland has sort of run themselves recently when it comes to many different things. And not just recently, honestly, it's been years where they've just had very astute leadership and, a real moral center as a country. And, something happens when times are really good for a long period of time. And that's something that happens as people get complacent and they start to forget how easy they have it or how good they have it. And sometimes people get a little lazy and they don't show up when they're supposed to show up to vote and things along those lines. And unfortunately, this weekend, a more globalist coalition appears to be on the path to taking over the country. They had an election. So far, it's only exit polls. We don't have final results. But according to the exit polls, it looks like that man who gave a beautiful defense of Poland in front of the EU is not going to have the same power anymore. That Poland itself is not going to be run by people like that who are going to protect its people, its culture, its country. It's going to be run by people who are part of the EU and are a part of, sort of that globalist vision of the world. And, my fear is that once they get their fangs in, these EU people, they really they take away the heart and soul of a country and make it just another part of the EU, and it all becomes kind of difficult to recognize versus other European countries. They're no longer distinct, and so the things that make Poland special start to get ripped away. And I think that that's sort of the sad reality of what is going to happen as a byproduct of this election in Poland that happened over the weekend. Another thing happened over the weekend. I don't have the image of it here, but in Ecuador, this just happened late last night. They elected a 35-year-old banana baron. Okay, he's a banana tycoon to be president. He's right wing. They defeated communism in Ecuador. Very, very proud of the voters there for showing up and standing up against communism and socialism, because that was essentially the question to the voters there. Are you going to go in more of a right wing direction like Bolsonaro or, like Bukele over in El Salvador? And they chose that path instead of the path of, hey, we're going to promise you free stuff and then steal everything from you. Shocking that they would choose that path, but they did. They chose that path and said, no, we're not going to buy the lies about free everything and, social justice and things along those lines. We're going to go down the path of, individualism and working hard and earning what we get. And, all of these ideas that we've seen, tried and true methods of finding success as a person, you just have to want it, And so Ecuador went down the right path, in my opinion. So sort of mixed election results, mostly good news over the weekend. The Poland thing was honestly just shocking to me that it went the direction that it went. This is something fun. I'm not going to play the whole video, but I'm going to play part of it. It's a principal question for you guys, okay? I've heard from so many people before, whether it be callers or anything else. They say, how is it that so many people vote Democrat? Okay, how do they win any elections? There's finally a video to explain how it happens. And there's really no better video to explain it. So we're going to jump on in. But by the way, before we jump in, if you want to call, if we have time left at the end of this, we're going to take one or two more callers after this video. It's 615 to call in, 703-5888. Talk about anything we talked about today or ask any questions you have. That's 615-703-5888. Hopefully we have time after this video.
Do you know how many stars there are on the U.S. flag?
52.
Yes. What state is Utah in?
Michigan.
Yes. Do you know what state Utah is in?
Utah, to be honest with you, I never heard of that place ever in my life. I live under a rock.
Can you name 3 countries besides the USA?
I suck at history. That was like my worst subject. Can we do like science?
No. Any three. You know this.
A country? Oh my jeez, this is terrible. Oh my god. A country. Wait, besides the U.S.?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't.
All right, it's fine.
I can't do history. I can't.
Do you know how many dimes there are in the dollar? Make up $1.
A dime is the 10 cent or the 5 cent?
You tell me.
I don't know.
Can you name 3 countries besides the USA?
Damn.
Any 3. You know this.
Canada? New Mexico. Right? That's good?
Yeah.
Damn, I need one more. Damn.
Yeah, so you got Canada, New Mexico, and what?
Ew. I need to go back to school.
Do you know how many states there are in total in the U.S.?
100.
How many continents are there?
3.
Continents?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know what 2 countries border the U.S.?
They have no
So
idea.
bordered.
Yeah, like on the borders.
The only borders I know is Puerto Rico and Mexico.
Yes. Who fought in the Civil War?
I don't know. You talking about president wise?
No, the people. Who against who?
I don't know that one. I know it had to do like what with France and I don't know the other one.
France and who? You're close.
France and the British are the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So, damn, I don't know.
Who did they fight against?
Us?
Yes. Do you know what continents we're on right now?
No, they don't. They don't know.
Do you know who fought in the Civil War?
Who fought in the Civil War? Like from the president?
These people.
No, like who against who?
It was the Nazis versus Germany.
Oh.
No. Yes. No. I'm gonna say yes, but correct me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
Yes. You actually just guessed that?
Nah. Yeah. I'm kind of smart.
You didn't know that?
Oh, you're kind of
Did they
smart.
teach you that in school or what?
They taught me it, but I just guessed it now. But
Yeah, so
it's like I forgot. But
yeah,
I mean,
just right in the back of your head and like it came up.
yeah.
How many Kardashian sisters can you name?
Oh, she knows this.
Kendall Jenner, Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian,
got all those.
Kourtney Kardashian. Is that all? That's all.
Yeah, that's all of them for sure.
Smart.
Yeah, dude, you're a genius. How many seasons are there?
May, June, July, August, September, October, December. 8? No,
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said 8.
Yes. Can you name 3 countries besides the USA?
3 countries.
Yeah.
Canada, Mexico, and Asia. No, Asia. Yeah, Asia.
Yes. What state is Utah in?
Utah? I don't know what Utah. I'm terrible.
Okay, I have to stop it real quick. Okay. I just want to point out that this is public school in action. Okay. When you hear Democrats crying about the need to respect public schools and the need to, fight for public school, first of all, they all send their kids to private school. Okay. Very few of them send their kids to public school. And the reality is this is the state of public schools in big cities. Okay. This is an education for these kids. Okay. This is their education. I mean, I can't say it any other way. This is what they're producing. And these people vote. Okay, so we'll keep going.
Best friend. I don't know history, like that world history stuff. I don't like. I'm mad.
You know what 3 times 3 times 3 is?
3 times 3 times 3. 3.
No, you know this.
Yeah, I know this. Stop. Hold on. Nah, because that's supposed to be a trick. That's supposed to be a trick thing. But like, I gotta do it in my head. It's hard. 9 and then 9 times 3. Damn. Damn. Oh, 36.
What's 3 times 3 times 3?
It's 3 times 3 times 3. Um, 36.
Yes. What's 3 times 3 times 3?
3 times 3 times 3. 9 times 3. But I don't know. I ain't gonna lie, I'm retarded.
Yeah, take a guess. A number.
Like 36.
Yes. What's 3 times 3 times 3?
12.
Yes. Do you know what continent we're on right now?
No. I don't know none of that.
Do you know who the current vice president is?
Vice president? No, I don't know his name, but I know I heard of it. I don't know.
You don't remember his name?
I know he's from Bulldog, if I'm not mistaken.
What's the capital of Chicago?
Capital of Chicago. Dame un segundo. I gotta think.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Is it Los Angeles? I feel like that's so wrong. Wow. That's not even a capital. My dumb ass. Capital of Chicago. I really don't know that one.
What language do the people in Idaho speak?
What?
Like the language, the people who live in Idaho, what do they speak? You know?
Hell no. I don't know. What? Japan?
Do you know how many presidents we've had so far?
Oh no. No, like
Around how many?
11?
Yes, around there. How long is a quarter of an hour?
25 minutes.
Yes. You know that what two countries border the U.S.?
You said what two countries? What?
Border?
Mexico? I don't fucking know. Mexico and I don't know. I forgot.
Yes. How many dimes make up $1?
How many dimes?
Yeah.
Oh my god, we're doing math now? Why are you doing all the questions I can't answer?
Take a guess. You know this.
Dimes. Wait, I'm trying to remember what dimes are. Wait, $1?
Yeah.
Next question.
How many minutes are in half an hour?
60.
Yes.
Wait, half an hour? Yeah, 60, right?
In half an hour?
No, 45, 30. 30?
Which one?
45.
Which number? What number?
35.
Yes. You almost messed up. How many dimes make up $1?
1,000 or 100? 100.
Yes. What year was the U.S. founded?
What year?
Yeah.
Oh, you lost me with that one.
Around what year? You know this.
Around what year was founded? I feel like I should know this one.
I feel like you do know this one.
What year was it founded? Nah, you got it with that one. I don't know.
Guess like around what year? If you had to guess.
Nah, cause I'm gonna look.
Guess a year. You know.
A year.
Around when?
Founded. I'm gonna be like 1995. No.
94, 95.
95.
It was 94.
Yo, what the fuck?
Yes. Do you know how long a quarter of an hour is?
A quarter of an hour, that's 25 minutes.
Yes. How many seasons are there?
5. Wait, spring, right? That's season. Spring, summer, winter, fall. 4. Spring, summer, winter, fall.
If you're driving 60 miles an hour and you've been driving for 1 hour, then how far do you travel?
I don't know. Like 60 miles. I don't know.
What's a guess?
30 minutes? I don't know.
60 miles an hour.
Yeah. And you've been driving for an hour, then what's the distance you go? How far do you travel?
I don't drive. So I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't know.
Take a guess. Like imagine you're in a car and you're driving 60 miles an hour and then you've been driving for an hour, then yeah, it is pretty fast. So how far do you think you would get in that time?
It wouldn't take me that long, so maybe like 20 minutes.
Yes. Do you know how many stars there are in the U.S. flag?
Dang, okay.
Around how many?
15, 16? I don't know.
15 or 16?
Yeah, 15.
Yes. How long is a quarter of an hour?
Like 30, half an hour. That's 30 minutes, right?
Yes. When do they celebrate the 4th of July in England?
I don't know.
If you had to guess.
Is it in July 2?
Yes. Nice. 2 days before us. Do you know who fought in the Civil War?
You know who fought in the Civil War?
Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
Soldiers.
You got me there. If you were born 10 years ago, then how old would you be today?
10 years ago. I don't know. I'll be like 14, 12. 12.
You know what? I'm done. I'm sufficiently depressed Yeah, I'll be back with you guys tomorrow. I'm not taking callers after that. I'm sufficiently I can't be held accountable for what I say after watching that video. So I'm gonna cut it for today. It was a great first show of testing this out, this technology. We'll try to take more calls tomorrow, and have a lot faster of a show tomorrow because we'll be going from topic to topic a lot quicker. That case today, is kind of laborious going through it the way that we did, but I kind of wanted to just kind of go through that transcript and just point out some of the lunacy in this and the standards that people are being held to. But I think I'm done after that video. That was enough for me for today, and I think I'm going to take the rest of the day to hang out with some people who are sane, like my chickens. Okay. So have a good day. Thank you guys. It was a lot of fun. Be back tomorrow around the same time ish. We'll hopefully find a standard time we'll use. But for now, we're just trying to figure it all out. So we'll see you guys soon.